Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar about empowering women. This is one of my favorite topics, and we'll be talking about two very inspiring experiences with two very important women in the telecommunications industry. And they are Doreen Bogdan-Martin. She's Director of Telecommunication Development Bureau in the International Telecommunication Union, and Susy Bobenrieth. She's Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Millicom Tigo. Thank you so much for joining us, girls. I am very, very thrilled to be with you today and to be able to hear your experiences about two main topics we're going to talk about. One of them has to do with leadership. You guys know a lot about leadership. And the other topic, the other key element about this conversation on empowering women is equality. So I'm going to start with a question that has to do with looking back a little bit in time. What would you say to your 20-year-old self? And what would you say to your 30-year-old self, maybe once you've gotten, 10 years into your career? We're going to start with Doreen. It's all yours.
Thank you, Carolina. So my 20-year-old self. So when I was 20, I was in my third year of university. I had just switched from studying chemistry to social sciences. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I was perhaps confused, looking for that niche area. So I guess I would say to myself, explore, travel, and learn as much as you can. And then to my 30-year-old self, so a lot happened between when I was 20 and when I was 30. When I was 30, I had just married a Spaniard. I had taken the decision to live in Europe, leaving my small town in New Jersey. I was in my early years as a professional at the International Telecommunications Union. And I guess I would say to myself, accept change and stay on course, because I was at the early stages of many exciting things in the technology field. And so my advice to myself would be stay on course.
Stay on course. I almost want to print it and put it on my desktop. So Susie, how about you? What will you say to your 20-year-old self, and what will you say to your 30-year-old self?
So great question. I think for my 20-year-old self, very similar to Doreen, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was probably partying a little bit too hard and enjoying life. And but I think that probably exploratory phase actually kind of helped later on in life to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, because I think it was also around making mistakes and doing things that weren't necessarily that were actually probably full of discovery, if you will. And 20, when I was 30, I had just taken my first international assignment. I had moved to Mexico City. I was single at the time, and I moved to a city of 25 million people, and it was my first kind of big risk, I think, and I was just getting off to a new adventure. I think my advice at that time would have probably been be confident, and don't be afraid to ask questions that may not even be in your own realm of your function, because probably everybody else in the room has the same questions. And the more questions that you ask, the more knowledge that you get, and just the more curious, and you learn a lot. So that's probably the advice I'd give my 30-year-old self.
The next question has to do with pointing out a single element in your career that propelled your success. Maybe it's not one particular element or one particular factor, but what would you answer to this? What is the main variable that propelled your success, Doreen?
Great question. I would say determination or drive. And I think that comes from my upbringing with very supportive parents. growing up with three brothers, being the only girl, being used to a sort of competitive environment, even in the family, and understanding that it's okay to fail. You can just get up and try again. So really staying determined. I think that's what's helped me throughout my life and my career.
How about you, Susie?
So I don't know, but Doreen and I, we just met yesterday, and we have a lot of parallels in our lives because I grew up also with a large family. I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters, and so being around boys and I think for me, both of my parents worked, and hard work, and from a very in high school we all had jobs, and my parents were role models. They were both very, very hard workers. So I think, one of the common red threads for me, and I think also with all my brothers and sisters, is I think it's, we're not afraid of hard work. And I think that's been probably one of the things.
So as I told you, this webinar has to do with empowering women and with basically 2 themes. One of them is leadership and the other one is equality. I'm going to focus on the second one for the next question. What is it like for you to be the only woman in an executive team, the only woman in a boardroom? We're going to start again with Doreen.
Thank you. Well, maybe just to sort of frame it and put it in a little bit of perspective, because International Women's Day this year was focused on leadership, and the Commission on the Status of Women is focused on leadership in the public sector. And of course, when we look at the tech sector, it's largely male dominated. Hence, of course, the boardrooms are largely male dominated. I think, from my early days in my career, I sort of got used to being the only woman on a delegation or a handful of women at a conference, a technical conference. So you kind of get used to it. I remember many occasions where once actually in Latin America where I was wearing red and the hostesses were wearing red and serving Coca-Cola, and everybody teased me and thought I was the Coca-Cola girl. So I didn't wear red for many years after, but often in my work experiences, and even today, you can be perhaps confused as the admin assistant or a junior level person that's going to help you with photocopying or making your hotel reservations. So I think there's a lot of work to do in this space. I think I was fortunate back in the late 90s. My director at the time, who came from a US private company to the ITU, he felt very strongly about diversity. And so he included 2 women in his management board, even though we were not at the level of the other men. So he chose me as one of the 2. It was difficult because I was in that management group with my immediate supervisor, who was not so happy about me being part of that team. And I remember very well that first meeting, because my supervisor turned to me and said, "So you'll be taking the notes, right?" And I said, "Sure, I'll take the notes today, but next time you take the notes," because we were all there as equals. So years on, I ended up in my first sort of board role, where I became the chief of strategy at the ITU. And at the time, I was one of 12 in the boardroom. Now I'm one of the 5 elected officials, so one of 5 at the top. I think you need to have thick skin. You need to be assertive. It can be lonely, but you can be effective. I really think that even though I'm still sort of the lone female, I think I can be effective. I would like that there are other women with me, because I do think that more diversity at the table really leads to better decision-making and better management.
Mm-hmm. That's an important point you just made there. What about you, Susie?
Yeah, very, very similar. I mean, obviously you would want more diversity and more women. I have been very fortunate in my career where I have worked very internationally. So there has been diversity of sorts, but relatively with few women at the executive level. Like Doreen, I mean, you definitely want more women there, but you don't want women just for women's sake. You want women there that have a point of view. You want women there that work well with the team. And I just personally, honestly, you can't take things personally, you know. I think who you are as a person and how you show up. When I have something to say that I feel is really important, if I'm not heard the first time, I will repeat it. And if that's not the right forum, I will kind of come back to it. And I also, you know, you can't really broad brush the rest of the men executives, very different styles. And so I look for allies. I look for people that I have commonalities with. And most importantly, you know, you're there to really do a job, and you're there for a reason. Doreen was there for a reason. I think I'm there for a reason, to provide a different point of view. And so I try to stay true to that, to what my point of view is, and to bring sometimes a diversity point of view, not to be in line to just say yes with everybody else, which can be super uncomfortable at times. And that's okay, because it's okay to have different points of views and be okay with that. And I think that, you know, whereas going back to my 30-year-old self, maybe I was trying a little bit harder to be kind of one of the guys, or kind of to fit in a little bit more. But the older that I got, and the more, you know, people that I've worked with, who I think we're going to talk about a little bit about mentors and sponsors, you know, you gotta have that confidence to say that you're there for a reason, and not be afraid of doing that, and not saying, well, because I'm a woman, it's because I'm here to do this job. And so that's kind of where I stand on that.
Well, many times that encouragement and that courage comes through the words or the work of someone else. Did you have a mentor, and how did that make a difference, Doreen?
Did I have a mentor? I think I had many mentors. Maybe I would also call them kind of coaches or champions. My father was a big mentor, role model for me. Again, teaching me not to give up, to stay on course, to sort of go for it. He was always there behind me. To my first job was in the U.S. government, where the assistant secretary, who was a woman, hired me as an intern. My first job was an intern. And she was amazing, because she would challenge all of us. We would write briefings for her, and she would always give feedback. It was good, it was not good, look at this, don't look at that. And that sort of feedback and encouraging relationship, I think, really helped me throughout my career. And then kind of a third person that stands out, when I was in my late 20s, I participated on the US delegation to a meeting in Egypt for the Arab states. And I was told by the head of delegation to go in and negotiate a text of a resolution that was on technical standards, which was not an area of my expertise. And I walked into the negotiating room. I was the only woman. I was absolutely terrified. And I had to take the microphone to present a proposal that was coming, of course, from outside of the region. And so this gentleman from Syria took me aside at the coffee break and said, I'm going to help you. And he gave me tips. I walked back in the room. I followed his tips. I was listening. I made the right gestures. I sort of went through the process, and the resolution was adopted successfully. And he later, you know, continued to kind of coach me and give me tips throughout my career. And I will always be grateful for those insightful tips that really helped in understanding how different cultures interact, how negotiations work, strategies. I mean, just a wealth of information and experience that I learned from this person.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Susie? Did you have a mentor or mentors, and how did they make a difference in your life?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer, like people come into your life for a reason. And I have been so incredibly fortunate to have worked with just amazing people. And I think that there's so many lessons that it's hard to pinpoint, maybe one person. I like to think of it as like you build like a personal board of directors for yourself. And there's things like what Doreen just talked about, there's somebody that comes in, like gives you tips in the moment. There's other people that you work for years that you actually really learn a lot of different things from. And to be really honest, I wouldn't necessarily call them mentors, but some of the biggest lessons from that personal board of directors has been people that have been unduly hard on me. And haven't necessarily been the ones that have always been supportive, but there's really super valuable lessons in there as well, that you learn. And I think if I had to highlight one, there's one gentleman that definitely comes to mind. And I think more than a mentor, his name is Steve Conroy, and we worked together. He was my boss at Nike. He gave me a lot of chances. And more than a mentor, he was a true sponsor. And he took chances on me, and I think Doreen mentioned earlier, somebody brought her into the boardroom when maybe she didn't tick all the boxes. And I think that happens to, a lot of men as well. I mean, at some point in time, somebody takes a chance on you. And I will forever be grateful to Steve, but certainly I think looking back, it's really about taking all of the different things and like what you really like, you try it on. And what you don't, you just kind of go, okay, and then you let it go.
Thank you guys for sharing your experiences with us. It's very interesting to talk about these abstract concepts like empowering women or choosing to challenge yourself with concrete experiences. So it is very, very valuable, and it's very important to hear your experiences, and that's why we have a lot of questions coming in from our audience, and I'm going to read one of them. It comes from Carla Rivas from Tigo, El Salvador, and she's asking, what advice do you have for women entering a tech-oriented, thus generally male-dominated field? We're going to start again with Doreen.
I think it's important to build your network. So, starting out, it's important to make friends, understand who you can trust. It's really important to have that network of men and women around you. So I think the network piece is critical. Reach out, as Susie had said before, ask questions, listen. It's important to try to find your way and find your space. I also think for women starting out in this sector, this is the place to be. And Susie, we've chatted about this. COVID has, fortunately or unfortunately, put the spotlight on the tech industry, on connectivity. And so what we do is really critical. It's a matter, as some say, it's a matter of life or death. So it's a great place to be. And I would just encourage more women and young girls to get engaged.
Mm-hmm. Susie?
I would say do it. I mean, I think that there is so much opportunity. One of the things that I am particularly proud of, and this is personally, is to work for Tigo, and it is such a purpose-driven company. We work in Latin America, in developing countries, and one of the things that we do is we really connect the communities. And like, so recently we just educated over 200,000 women in the community through a program called Conectadas, which really provides digital education, brings them into the digital financial world, and it's helping and empowering. And that's just an example of my recommendation is find what your values are with companies that are really aligned with what is important to you, because I think you will be far more successful if you really love and have passion for what you do. And like, what is better than being in the digital age and being able to kind of connect and develop and being in a position where you can really shape that, right? And so I think it's an amazing industry. It really, really is. It may not have been as sexy in the past, but it's absolutely really, really, really critical. And I think that for the young women, there's so much opportunity. Identify the difference between speed bumps and roadblocks, and persevere. You got to always keep your eye on the horizon, and you'll have great success, undoubtedly.
And we even got a little bit of Spanish, Susie, there, conectada.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe by the end we'll get a little bit more from you, because I know you can speak Spanish. Doreen as well, but she's a little bit shyer about her Spanish. But we have two Spanish speakers. Let's see, we have another question coming in from Tigo, Bolivia, and it's from Maria Laura Mendoza. What is a key piece of advice that you would give the younger members of your team, particularly working in this field, Doreen?
Do your homework. Be prepared. I mean, I can't stress enough the importance of preparation. Be prepared, be over-prepared, and always be ready. Would be my key message. And I guess the other point, and this comes back a bit to leadership. If there's no space for you at the table, they often say, bring your own chair. And so I want young people to think about how they can be recognized, how they can contribute. And if they're not finding their space at the table, they should be ready to kind of bring their own chair and then perhaps leave it for the next one.
Bring your own chair. That's an interesting phrase. So Susie, how about you?
My advice would be create the future, right? I think that is really important. And I don't think it's exclusive to young women. I think it's also for everybody. In the world that we live in, and at the rapid pace of change, I think you have to be a continuous learner. And I don't think, working in human resources, we're not hiring people today to do a job. We're hiring a person or people or young women to actually create the future. So do more than your job. Look right, look left, look around the corner, and come with solutions, come with ideas, really create the future, and don't dwell on setbacks and, maybe injustices or perceived injustices, but continue moving forward and be the change you want to see.
Be the change you want to see. We got a lot of great insight from this talk, and that's a wrap. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for engaging and participating with us. Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you so much.
It is very, very important and inspiring. Okay, so we didn't get to ask all the questions you sent us, but this will be available for replay. And for all of you who have registered for the webinar, you will be sent a link so you can see it again and go through all the inspiring answers that both Susie and Doreen have given us. So remember that you can follow us on our social media at Millicom, or visit our website, millicom.com. And please do send us your insights using our hashtags for Women's History Month, hashtag Choose to Challenge and hashtag Equality.